Good afternoon. I just really want to thank Yönetim for inviting me to speak this afternoon. The good news, I'm getting to talk about a topic that I really enjoy, which is trends. The bad news is I've got you after lunch, your coffee's starting to wear off, and hopefully this will go quickly. So 15 minutes, and we'll go right through these. We have some slides that I just want to share with you. You know, the great thing about trends, I love following trends. I love researching trends, understanding how trends impact commercial real estate. It's an interesting job. To do the research, you have to visit a lot of places. You have to travel. You have to sit in restaurants, eat a lot of food, have drinks, watch people. It's a really tough job, but somebody has to do it. And through that research, I have learned a little bit about the types of trends that impact our business. I'm an architect, I'm a planner, but this is not a talk about architecture or architectural trends. It's about lifestyle trends that impact our business. I can tell you that, let's see if this works, well-planned and well-designed projects and developments can improve people's lives and make for great places. We all believe that. All architects believe that. It's this thing called placemaking, the art of creating a wonderful place by creating enclosure, by creating the sense of attachment to a place. And that's all great stuff, but it doesn't alone direct and help to evolve our commercial real estate projects. It's other types of things. And so we have to also know about those things because sooner or later they do impact us. We must future-proof our projects, make them last for several decades at least, and be able to be flexible enough to change. So that's my first premise, is that number one, we have to know these trends to future-proof. So here we are in Istanbul. Please excuse the tourist photo, but I first came to Istanbul in 1992. Of course, I went to the Grand Bazaar. I walked around. I got a sense of the retailing that happens there. It's certainly an interesting place to study. I took this photo in 2013. Hasn't changed a lot. This photo, of course, from 1927 or something like that. You can see that it hasn't changed that much, but what I know every time I go there is it's the experience that I have when I'm there. And it may not be the best place in the world to buy a carpet, I don't know, but I enjoy some guy grabbing me by the shoulder and bringing me upstairs to have some tea. And yes, I buy a carpet, and it's probably not the best place to buy it or the most convenient, but it's an experience. And as an American, I enjoyed that because it's very different than the experiences that I've had in the United States. So this is where East meets West, of course. Our shopping malls have evolved. Now we have more of a mixed use happening at these things, but still retail has always been the key there. Mall of Istanbul, another project that opened up about 4 years ago, we're very proud of, along with Istiniye Park. And the one thing about all of these places is that successful real estate, commercial real estate, has always relied upon an active street level. Those ground levels have to be activated in order for it to be successful because they really are the amenities for all these towers that are up above. So yes, people, lots of people in these places. This is National Harbor in Washington, D.C., and it's places like this that we want to go when we want to be with people. It's not just about shopping, right? So now we know it's about food and other things. This is downtown Silver Spring, also in the Washington area. So my first trend, I have 8 of them that I'm going to mention to you. They're in green, so you'll know when they come up. But due to other channels of distribution, including the internet and discount shopping, outlet malls, etc., retail is now only the supporting actor of these public spaces. It's no longer the lead actor. And I don't think that's too surprising necessarily to anyone here. But what's ironic about this, perhaps, is that with the additional time that we have on our hands possibly because of automation or because of the fact that we can work away from the office, we can work in a coffee shop. We have more desire than ever to be in these people places. And in order to engage with other people, the more our society becomes about technology and high tech, the more we want to be high touch and with other people. So if it's not traditional retail that invigorates the street level anymore, what is it? And it's no surprise to any of you that I'm going to say food, because obviously that's been there. It's been there for a long time. We know food's going to be part of it. But it's not just restaurants and cafes. So trend number 2 is that the new designer brands are chefs, and that chefs can help curate our developments and add a whole new facet to it and a theme that has a lot of authenticity and that people understand, because it's the authenticity of the chef and his approach to cooking that can make a big difference. Whether it's farm-to-table restaurants, chef-curated food districts, which I'm going to show you an example of in a minute, food hall incubator type opportunities for chefs that want to launch a new concept, a restaurant eating concept right out of culinary school, pop-up trailers and all the rest. So some chefs are even going fast casual, and they're saying they're doing it because they get to feed more people, and they get to have more influence and spread their ideas around more and become more relevant, because people often want fast casual food. Food markets, which have been around since the dawn of civilization, are now evolving, and now we want to eat in those food markets as well. We don't take food home and cook it as much as we probably used to, so some of these are being converted to places where you can eat. You can have soup and bread at the countertop. Or near here in Maslack, we just did a food hall a few years ago that is an example, and as these evolve, but they're examples of small, fast casual types of concepts. And I think what you're going to see in the next evolution of these food halls is that they are going to be incubator, startup, chef concepts that people are really drawn to. And the developers and the investors will often build the bar, maybe in the center, and actually get to make money off of the bar that's in this place while everybody else is working to create these different food concepts. I think you'll see a lot of that. This has been very popular. Millennials love this idea. It's authentic. It's not a national brand. It's the anti-brand. A couple of renderings of this project, which is now open. And since food is so popular, we know it's not a surprise that it's being brought into other traditional forms of retail. You're seeing this everywhere. Shinola, a new brand that's come out of Detroit, Michigan, of all places, now in Paris, London, all over the U.S., has a cafe in addition to selling watches and bikes and I think luggage also. This is one of my favorites. This is near where I live in Baltimore, and it is a bicycle repair cafe bar. And it seems like we want to cram all these different uses into one space, because when we're in any one space, we want to see something. We want to see people making something with their hands. And I thought it was interesting what Tyler said this morning about exactly that. You want to see people doing something, making something. It's unique, it's different. So this one is this is one that I did not design this. I don't think it would have been screwed up if I designed it, but it's a guy who's making pizzas while his buddy is repairing bikes behind him, and they sell gear oil, and they also have a bar off to the side. But it's an interesting place to go. A new development in Washington that's just opened up on the waterfront is called The Wharf. You know, it is all food, some yoga, some fitness, no retail to speak of at all. But those uses at the ground level are the amenity for all these residential and office buildings above. It's a nice development. This was 2 weeks ago. I was there for brunch. It was about 10:30 in the morning. It was about 10 degrees Celsius, a little chilly, and it was a little early. No one was out yet, but at 10 degrees Celsius, people are outdoors eating. with their coats on, but people want to be outside. They want al fresco dining. I think we know this. We see it in Istanbul. We were able to do it at Istinye Park to some extent. Across the world in Indonesia, this is at the equator. It's almost too hot always to be outside. But still, if you create some shade in the right places, people are still going outside. They want to hear live music. They want to be where other people are. So trend number 3, the sharing economy has further disrupted the street level. One no longer has to own clothes or a car in order to be fashionable or mobile. So what do I mean by that is, one, rent the runway, which I'm sure all the women here are familiar with, where you can order a dress for an evening. They'll send you one size smaller, one size bigger, and one of them's bound to fit, and then you return them all after your event. Uber, ride sharing, has really changed our real estate developments. We need less parking. I came here today via Uber and an airplane. And I think what we're going to find is that is going to impact the street level even further, certainly in terms of apparel, where there's going to be less and less apparel probably being sold in bricks and mortar stores. The stores that will be selling them, that will be one of the additional channels of retail that will be used in addition to the internet. The 4th trend, adaptive reuse and redevelopment, makes sense due to the less available land that we have and the fact that millennials love it, and it creates authenticity. There's no question about it, and redevelopment is a great opportunity. Acacia, which I assume you're all familiar with, which opened up 4 years ago on a former Ford factory site. It was cleaned to the ground, it was demolished. In this case, it grew out of all of that because of the new opportunities, because of the changes to Istanbul. But there are other opportunities for adaptive reuse, another way to redevelop a site. Chop House Row in Seattle. This is called skinny development. It's more like infill development, more like you may see in the United States. But the woman who developed this, they keep the facade on the front more or less the way that it was, but there are new structures built behind it for residential. And it creates some interesting spaces when you get in behind these buildings and you take over the alleyway. And all of a sudden people are hanging out in the alleyway. And the reason people like those spaces is because they're not supposed to be there. And it's interesting and it's unique. So it tends to be food, gallery space, art, maker market space. And this is an example looking at one of the larger squares where there was some demolition in the middle of the block, but they kept the yellow exposed concrete because of its texture and just because of the fact that it's authentic. So these are the kind of spaces that I think we're going to be designing when we do ground up buildings as well in the future. And I'll show you some other examples in a minute. Another new retail concept by Urban Outfitters is called Terrain. This was the first one they did in the Philadelphia market. It's called Terrain at Stiers. They took an old greenhouse and converted it to retail, and they even have weddings there now, but you can still get plants there. It's a nursery, but it's also a cafe, and it's also home gifts. And it's a wonderful place to go and to mingle. It's got a lot of character to it, a lot of repurposed materials. People love this. And you'll go there just to eat, even though previously it was a nursery. And of course, you have weddings there. Trend number 5, international brands are less desirable than they previously were in the U.S. and some other places. Today, we place a higher value on art and other unique creations. And even Amazon is getting into this, and Etsy, of course, which is handmade gifts you can buy on the internet. So I think we're starting to see things that are one-off, where it doesn't want to look like a chain at all. Art house, this is where you have a pizza and a gallery, art gallery, all in one building. Other brands that pop up that people feel drawn to because they feel it's unique, and they don't have that store at home. So travelers want to find the unique aspect of each city they visit, which might be a carpet at the Grand Bazaar, and experience it and take it home if possible. Why bother buying the same international brands that are available everywhere unless they're a bargain price? So ultimately, I think we're going to have to deal with that, and there will always be some of these international brands. And Estienne Park, I don't think, is going away with its outdoor area and the Gucci and Armani stores. But I think that the growth in these going forward is going to change. And I think we're going to be looking at some other types of more diversity. So artist studios that create and sell in the same space are a great amenity to a mixed-use environment. So this is an example of adaptive reuse. It's an old torpedo factory building in Alexandria, Virginia. It's near Washington, D.C. 30 years ago, it was converted to this, which is an art gallery, that a collection of artists, and they sell what they make. It's the original maker market space. So inside, you can walk around. It's a very simple interior. But people are painting, you can watch them paint, then they put their paintbrush down and they'll come sell you something as well. All in one space. And people love looking at others who are creating with their hands. And then, of course, there's other types of artisans like glass blowing. This guy, I took my kids here and they make ornaments, and then they get to take them home after they've cooled. And then this guy, he sells these in the same space. We've found some ways to create, our rated wall partitions so that we can put all these different uses next to retail, next to food, next to co-working. And of course, when a place is doing well when they have weddings there. All in the same space. Trend number 6, short-term leases for street-level uses. Street-level spaces. It's a big challenge for us in our industry, for developers. It's like, how do you deal with the short-term lease when you're trying to finance a project and a development? We've, in the office space, we have WeWork and Spaces and these other groups that master lease space, and then they lease it out to small tenants. They pay plenty of rent, more than traditional retail sometimes. But they don't sign long-term leases because they're trying out new ideas and they're not sure if it's going to work. But they're very creative in how they use the space. Co-working is a valid street-level use and can complement retail and food and other things, especially when it involves a craft, as I said, or design, or an interesting fabrication. So WeWork obviously creates that kind of environment. And I would argue that this type of thing can commingle with food and retail and other uses at the street level. This is in Paris, so another WeWork space that opened up. And the interesting thing about it that we have found, my colleague who is in our Paris office, is that this type of a space, they don't even check your ID to see if you belong or you're paying your monthly fees unless they get really crowded. They're glad to have you. They want the energy in the space, which I think is interesting. So the future will be less about leasing and more about curating the experience. We must master plan our experiences and discoveries. Our new developments do not want to feel like projects. They don't want to feel it. They want to feel like they evolve. And that's not an easy thing to do when you're planning a big project. I am not advocating that we not do big projects. I'm an architect, remember? So this is an example of a project in Washington that we're working on. It is 4 blocks up there. One on the right is a new soccer field for DC United, football, soccer style, as we call it in the U.S. And then there are several blocks next to it. The building on the far left is an existing Coast Guard building being converted to apartments. And then the 2 blocks in the middle, you can see we're trying to design those and plan those in an organic fashion that appears that maybe it developed over time, allows for some discovery of space. It's like walking through Lucca, Italy, or some other European village. And you'll notice that we have purple and blue, and the idea is that in this we have small maisonettes, or three-story townhouses that one can buy or rent. And you may live on one level, have a studio on one level, rent out another level for co-working, and it's mixed with other retail in the space. So I'll show you some more examples. But the result of all these trends, I believe, is that the next wave of mixed-use projects is going to be this collection, artfully sculpted organic space that has food, drink, fitness, retail, of course, entertainment, art, and co-working all in one space, all on maybe 2 or 3 levels. So we have to create that in a way that is interesting and sculpturally interesting and very three-dimensional. This is a very early sketch of the one that we're working with now, but with some of these types of uses gathered. It wants to be a very comfortable place, modern, but warm materials, metal, wood, rusty metal, a lot of landscaping, a lot of green space. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. This is a large project. It's about 7 office towers, mid-rise towers, as high as they are allowed in Washington, D.C. And you can see on the left a woonerf, which is a woonerf is a Dutch term for a walkable street where the pedestrians dominate. Cars are allowed, but only when they have to be there for servicing or if you belong there. So you can see that we're co-mixing several of these levels, living, the bike cafe, art gallery, and up above this grocery space, we create a high line, a sky park. And I'll show you that in more detail here in a minute. So it's a large development. This is a diagram that just kind of shows you how it works, at least one scenario of this with retail and food and beverage. In this case, we still had a lot. We have a grocery store that has some interest here. Then we have these maisonettes, which are the co-working studio space. On top of that, we have the High Line and some parks that start to allow to happen at that level. So these become the green amenity for the apartment buildings above. And then the apartment towers themselves. So it creates this upper level type of space. Which leads me to trend number 7, that the desire for security and more open space is driving the creation of the Sky Park and the High Line. So I think most people are familiar with the High Line in New York. Tyler mentioned it this morning as well. It is another area for us to have open space. So in this sketch, you go up the stairs on the right, and then you're on the High Line level. We can still have security, just like we do at the malls. We have pinch points where people have to come in. And you can see how the access works just above the woonerf, which is the pedestrian street, and you have live, work, studio space. So it's very three-dimensional space that is operating similar to our malls, but it's in a much more creative type space, and we've got a lot of different uses that we're putting together. So curating those uses is going to be very big. So where we have we work now for office space, we need a we live and a we play. We play to help master lease some of these spaces. We began looking at some of these at Mall of Istanbul, but I think this is going to get to be much bigger in the future. We've always used some of that upper level space as amenities. But I think it's just a matter of how we create those spaces. So trend number 8, residences, entertainment, fitness, co-working, and food will replace vacant department stores. And in some cases, we're going to have some vacant stores. It's bound to happen with all the retail that we have in the world. So these tend to be large footprints. So what do we do with them? You know, one idea is to take a footprint. This is Estenier Park, the outdoor area at Estenier Park. It's about the size of a hypermarket. But you could create this kind of an outdoor environment with apartments above it where once sat an anchor, and this could anchor a mall. And we've seen this happen now in a few places, and I think it makes sense. Some malls are too big. This is a way to reduce the size of the mall and get a more open outdoor area to help replace some of that extra space. With a cafe in the middle, this is a courtyard plan that we've used many dozens and dozens of times, I think successfully. People like that sense of enclosure of the buildings around them and to have a jewel box type building in the middle. So Stenye and the outdoor area there, which you're familiar with, obviously the outdoor area with, yes, the brands and the opportunity to be seen and to drive your car in. Entertainment experiences in outdoor social spaces enhance and invigorate our commercial developments. So that was an example of outdoor social spaces. There's also an opportunity to do, as we did in South Africa in this project, to create an entertainment anchor to a mall that needs to be smaller. So in this case, the mall was designed for this anchor, entertainment anchor, and no one really knew exactly how to create that. We've had some experience with that, especially some of my colleagues who have focused on this. But the idea is that you take that footprint of that anchor and it's all entertainment uses. It is bowling, it is concert space, it's a rock climbing wall in the middle. And it can change from early in the day to later at night. On the outside, there's a wave house. In Durban, South Africa, they have some of the best surfing in the world. They also have some of the largest sharks in the world. And therefore, it's much safer to surf here than it is out in the ocean. And there's also a skateboard park at the top there, Tony Hawk branded skateboard park. So this is the wave house. And one of the other things there that's been very successful is the way we're buying cars is changing as well. And I think there's going to be more experience added to that. So this is a Nissan dealership that's located here, and there's a four-wheel drive track that goes around the whole development. They get more people to come to this dealership than any in the world, I'm told. And it makes sense, and it's fun. On the inside of the space, there's a lot of things that can go on. This is food. This has been open for a number of years now. But at night, it can be transformed into a concert venue for live music. So it's about people. And it's not about architecture. It's not just architecture. It's about people and what we do with people and how we provide experiences for them as developers and designers to get them to come back and to make those special places.
Mr. Torricello, please wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.